Hey everybody, welcome back to Music Theory Monday. If you've seen all the previous videos, we're approaching the end of what I would consider to be the bare necessities to be comfortable with music production. Let's then finish that chapter and be done with the basics, alright? And if you like this video, the last thing we need to talk about is what I would categorize under the umbrella of timing rather than rhythm. I think that labeling it as rhythm opens up a door that I don't want to open just yet. In classical music, this discussion is weaved into other arguments, but since we're learning things in a vacuum, I think this is the great time to introduce it. So what do I mean when I say timing? Well, we do know how to make chords, progressions, how scales are formed, and other cool stuff like that. But what we haven't talked about is how all those things combine on a timeline of an actual song, aka what you're going to be doing most of the time. If we want to make a blanket statement of a definition, it would be timing dictates what should be played, when, and for how long. Okay, I don't really know what is the best order to explain these things in because they're so intertwined with each other, but I'm going to do my best, and feel free to jump around the video if you need to. To make things easier, I will also show you a DAW example of everything I talk about so you can get to see those things in context. Okay, basics time. Beats and measures. Bars, beats, Battlestar, Galactica. A beat, also referred to as count, sometimes, is a basic unit of time we use in music. You may have heard a drummer shout 1, 2, 3, 4 before starting a song. Each of those is a beat. The concept of a beat is so ingrained in us that every time you nod to your favorite song, each of those is likely to fall on a beat. We use it to keep time when it comes to tempo, time signatures, and other stuff you'll see shortly. A bar or measure is a container for an X amount of beats. Well, how do you know how many beats are in your song and how long they are? Well, usually there's 4 beats in a bar. That's the short answer. The long answer is that you should check the time signature. It shows you the number of beats and their length. We'll discuss length in the note duration section of the video, but this, however, is a great segue for time signatures. Time signature is a rhythm staple, a division-looking set of numbers you'll find at the beginning of a composition. In sheet music, it's usually all the way to the left near the clef, while in the digital world, it's usually in a top bar, and it looks something like 4/4. That's the most common time signature in the world. The first number, 4, indicates how many beats there are in a measure. Remember measures, also known as bars? We've talked about them about 20 seconds ago. The second number, still 4, indicates how long these beats last. Essentially, what 4/4 tells you is that a single measure is composed of 4 beats, each the length of a quarter note. 7/8 would mean there are 7 eighth notes, and so on. You get it. Time signatures are a really vast ocean to explore, but some of them are more useful than others. 4/4, for example, also known as common time, is called that because 99% of popular music is using it. I don't think it's going to be a reach to say that it's the time signature all of us are familiar with because of how ubiquitous it is in our everyday life, from songs we listen to ads on our YouTube videos. However, this does not mean that other time signatures cannot be useful. You can combine the two, for example, or even change them on the fly to surprise the listener and throw them off guard with your rhythms. When done correctly, it injects a new dose of energy into the song and wakes up the listener. And while popular music is mostly built on 4/4, other time signatures like 3/4, 7/8, 5/4, and whatever else may they be, are more commonly explored in metal and jazz music, so look there for inspiration. Next, tempo is what a lot of people, normies, refer to as rhythm. It's how fast your song is, and it's measured in BPM, beats per minute. If a song has a BPM of 120, there's 120 beats happening in a single minute. That's it. It's simply how fast your song is. There's not much to say about tempo aside from maybe the fact that different genres work best in different tempos. Boom bap, for example, hovers around the 90, trap is north of 140, and so on. There's no stable BPM for a genre, more like ranges of suggested tempos. After all, everything will depend on your song and your song only, and sometimes changing the tempo, even if you've been working on it for a while, is what you need to make the song click in your head. Ultimately, all of those are just guideline numbers, and it's all a matter of your taste. And that being said, tempo doesn't need to be fixed either. It can change throughout the song, so don't worry if you want to change it up. as long as you do it tastefully. The final discussion to be had is about note duration. It's how long a note is being played for. Now, usually music discussion is presented within the limits of sheet music. But I'm not a classically trained musician. I don't know sheet music any longer. My last brush with it was about 22 years ago. There are times where I wished I knew it so I could more easily understand what was going on when researching more advanced concepts, but truth be told, I never encountered any issue with not being able to use it in my work life. Would I advise you to learn it? Yes. Yes, I would advise you to learn it. Would I advise myself to learn it? Yes, sooner or later it's going to happen, or so I keep telling myself. Maybe having a YouTube channel is finally the push I need. In any case, we aren't going to be using any sheet music here. We're going to be using regular piano rolls. If you've never seen a piano roll, every DAW has one. This is what you're going to be working a lot in, so get comfortable. You click on it and notes pop up. Being able to choose the right note duration is the difference between, wow, this is too fast, and wow, this is dragging a little bit. There are no real rules about how long a note should inherently be. It will depend on what you are trying to do with it, as well as from the settings of your actual project. Now, duration-wise, there's several ways a note can be. Technically speaking, it can be as long as you want it to be. You can stretch it out to fill the entire duration of your song, but that's unlikely to sound good by itself. I'm going to pick the note duration values from sheet music for this. The most basic note duration is a whole note, which lasts for 4 beats regardless of time signature. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it, that's a whole note, and this is how it looks. Half note is half of what a whole note lasts for, so it's 2 beats. A quarter note is a quarter of a whole note, 1 beat. Eighth note is half a beat. 16th note is quarter of a beat. 32nd note is an eighth of a beat. You can get more granular than this, but it's pretty much the gist of it. The only real advice I've seen ring true a lot is that the lower the frequency of a note, the longer the duration you can get away with. On the other side of that, fast note changes are usually more reserved for high frequencies. There's a lot less frequency pollution that way. Too many rhythmic changes in low frequencies most often than not turns your song into mud. Generally speaking, of course, if you know what you're doing, you're going to be able to prove me wrong. Now, this is where we give a big round of applause to people who code and work on our software. Whenever working in a DAW, you have a visual representation of the grid, which then you can adjust on the fly so you can see what you're actually doing. Now, to be clear, you are not limited to these values. Your note can last somewhere in the middle of a quarter and a half note, for example, but this is just a visual anchor. Understanding the context around what you're doing will help you better explain your music, both to yourself and the listener. Other than that, there are special note durations. Not their actual name, by the way. That note between quarter and half note that I just mentioned, for example, that's a dotted quarter note. That's its technical name. Dotted notes last the entirety of the duration of that note plus 50% of that duration on top. So a dotted eighth note, for example, would last an eighth note plus half of that, so a 16th note on top of it. Dotted whole note is then a whole note plus half note on top of it. Think of it as 150% of the note duration. And another special type of note duration are the triplets. I initially didn't want to talk about triplets, but considering their popularity, it would just be stupid not to. Triplet notes do something weird if you've never seen them before. Instead of dividing a note in factors of 2, meaning whole, half, quarter, 8, 16, and so on, we do so in the factors of 3. For example, this is a bar. This is how we usually see it. You can subdivide that, however, into triplets instead. The length of the bar is the same, but you divide it differently into thirds. If we want to give a textbook definition, the best explanation I found is that a triplet is a rhythm playing 3 notes in a space of 2 notes. This, for example, is a bar made out of 4 half notes. And this is a bar made out of 6 triplet half notes, 3 notes in a space of 2. It's a little awkward to explain, but you'll eventually get the hang of it when you get your hands on the actual notes. It's really a different way of thinking about bars rather than individual notes, and talking about triplets without the context of the song around them is rather fruitless in my opinion. I'm not going to spend too much time on it now, but it is something you can pursue on your own if you want to, and you should. Especially those among you who are into rhythm-heavy genres. Triplets are used a lot in trap music, for example, both as hat and snare rolls. Congratulations! If you have watched all 5 music theory videos up to this point, you have officially finished all the beginner lessons. This is enough to carry you through the entirety of your music journey, but I do encourage you to stick around and explore music theory further. Music Theory Monday is far from over. There's still 13 videos left in a cauldron for me to write, and ultimately, we're doing this to become better at what we're doing, so it's well worth the time investment. But that being said, that's it for today. I might take a 1-week break from Music Theory Monday so I can write in peace and finally catch a breather. I may not take the break, I don't know, there's only one way to find out. So, have a nice day. Bye everybody, my name is Viktor Vee, and I am out.